Hello and welcome. You're watching Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I am Kayode Okikulu here in Lagos. But we're starting off in Katsina State. Take a look at this.
We want our children. We want our children. We want our children. Governor must talk. Governor must talk. We want security. We want security. Kankara is bleeding. Bandits is too much. Katsina State is bleeding. We want us. We want our children. We want our children. We want our children. Governor must talk.
The parents of the 333 students still unaccounted for at the government-signed secondary school Kankara in Katsina State staging a peaceful protest to demand the immediate rescue of their children. The protest started from the school, with the protesters walking through parts of the town, displaying placards which you can see bearing various inscriptions. But the message is clear. They want their children back. Well, the nation at large is also trying to come to terms with that attack, which happened on Friday night. So let's tell you what we know so far. Well, out of 839 students in that school, 333 of them are still unaccounted for, although that might change at any moment, as more are said to be coming out of the forests where they sought refuge during the attack. Also, the police is yet to report any incident of casualty. Also, no group has contacted the government to claim responsibility for the attack. More on this, the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has sent more operational and investigative assets to Katsina State to support rescue operations. The military, supported by air power, has located the bandits' enclave at Zango Pala Forest in Kankara, and there has been exchange of fire in an ongoing operation. We also know that the governor has ordered the closure of all boarding schools in the state. And, earlier on, Governor Aminu Masari received a federal government delegation led by the Minister of Defense and the National Security Advisor, who said that with a brief that they received from security agencies, this task will be very simple to accomplish. Take a listen.
I appreciate the concern shown by the President and Commander-in-Chief by authorizing your coming here to sympathize with the people of Katsina State, the parents, teachers, and the Ministry of Education of Katsina State. The children so far kidnapped cut across the state because the school is a boarding school. It houses all children from all parts of the state and some even from outside the state. It has a population of 839, and so far we are yet to account for 333 pupils, and we are still counting because more are coming out of the forest, and we are calling through the numbers, those parents that have numbers, to find out whether their children have gone back home, because
Well, the Minister of Defense also spoke about the brief they had gotten, and here's what he said.
Today, with all the sorrowfulness in our mind, we are coming today also to sympathize with you. I don't know, is it kidnapping or whatever, but I think it is more or less a useless exercise conducted by few to disrupt the education of children, about 800 of them. And the confusion arises therefrom in the Kankara local government. We felt this kind of thing, which happened 2 days ago, the armed forces and the police and other security agencies must move very fast to ensure the students are rescued. We are doing this on the belief that if these kind of people are allowed to rest for a moment, we are also equally condoning this kind of activities. And the conclusion within most of the security agents is that it's high time we declare this kind of people terrorists. If we do that, probably people will now sit up, because once you are a terror, you don't have any right for your life.
Well, the president, who is currently on a private visit to his hometown in Dora, Katsina State, has also condemned the attack and ordered the security agencies to go after the attackers and ensure that no student is harmed. It is 8:05 p.m. here in Lagos, and we're still waiting to hear some good news on the whereabouts of a student. So while we wait, let's try to understand all that has transpired much better. And we're being joined tonight on the program by Honorable Adejoro Adeogun, Vice Chairman, House Committee on National Security and Intelligence, as well as Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, who is an adjunct professor at the George Marshall European Center for Security Studies in Germany. He's also Deputy Head Security and Safety at the African Union Commission. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. Well, Honorable Adeogun, let me begin with you, because I know the House has been quite vocal about security in recent times, which is why you invited the President to come address the National Assembly concerning security. Now, with this latest incident, what are your immediate thoughts?
Well, let me start by sympathizing with the students, parents, and the people of Katsina State. It's rather sad that we're recording such an incident at this point in time. There's a lot that we need to do to actually make this country more secure than it is presently. There are a lot of challenges, and I'm hoping that this will teach everyone a lesson that we all have to just bind together to make this country more secure for the citizens.
Well, Group Captain Shehu, there have been several accounts, there have been several timelines given, and I know you've been following some of them. So if you could just help us make a sense of all that has transpired, really. Can you help us? Group Captain Shehu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, please.
Yes, so the question is simple. There's been so many accounts of what transpired, different timelines about what happened, who did this, when did it happen, and all that. Can you help us make a sense of this all, such that we can have a better understanding of what we're dealing with here?
So, thank you very much. I will join the Honorable Lawmaker in, first of all, commiserating with the people of Katsina and the parents of the children that are still missing. We say still missing because we don't know what is their fate now. Now, whenever there is an abduction, especially of school children, like we have seen, it has happened in all other countries. Just while efforts are being made to recover the children, at the same time, timelines and lessons will start to be documented and kept. On a personal level, being somebody interested in security, as soon as this thing started happening, first of all, of course, there's always the element of fake news. So many numbers will be flying. But what became clear after about 24 hours is that we had initial problem. And this problem, we saw it in Chibok, we saw it in Dapchi. First, there was even problem of confirming how many children are in that school. And this will send a warning to anybody who has to do with education. Not only education, any public working place. At any time of the day, it is good practice to know how many people are in a particular building or in particular school, because that information is first very important. It's only when you know that, then you start accounting for how many are you looking for. It took, if my arithmetic is okay, it took more than 24 hours for us finally to have a number. I had the first announcement by the governor, the first announcement also by the commissioner. We didn't have a number. And honest, that is not good. That is not good enough in a public school not to have a number. Now, the next thing we should be looking at, from the interviews I had either on BBC or on local channels of the people that are there, we had that shooting started at around 9 p.m. What should concern us? Not apportioning blame, but how we get better. If shooting started at 9 p.m., at what point did security arrive there? Again, if my arithmetic is correct, I think it happened, they said shooting started 9 p.m. on Friday night, and then the first response from security was on Saturday. Certainly, this is not good enough. So now again, as we are going into the rescue operation, I would like to be very, very, first to sympathize with the people that are involved and also to commiserate with the security officers, but at the same time to sound a warning. In all honesty, I am not happy or I'm not completely comfortable when I hear that shots are being exchanged or fire is being exchanged. In a situation where you have children that are still with the hostages, and it is not even a confined space like we had in the Bestland attack in Russia some years ago. This is inside the forest. I think the idea of exchanging fire with people who are still holding our children should be properly thought about. There could be a lot of risk in that. When you have hostages with any criminal or any abductor, I think if he has hostages, the first issue would be negotiation. Again, it shows the training we lack in our security architecture. Every police department should have negotiators. At this time, we should be negotiating because you cannot be firing into the bush when you don't know where the children are. So these are some of the issues that we start, looking at. Not like I said, the issue is not throwing blame, but the issue we have to accept that attack on schools has become a function not only in Nigeria, in many other conflicts around the world.
Right.
Because of the value of children.
Well,
because
on that
of the,
point, quickly,
international media attention. So definitely there are lessons to be learned from the government side, from the school authorities. You have to have the minimum security and safety standards. They may not stop attack, but they will give you a time to react or even serve as a deterrent to anybody wanting to attack the school.
Just quickly on that point of school, the question will be, so why attack a school? Because this looks like the modus operandi of what we saw with Boko Haram, the abduction of the Dapchi schoolgirls, the Chibok schoolgirls. Do you think that this might be a terrorist act?
Thank you very much. Yes, we had the abduction in Chibok and Dapchi, which we must remember they are girls' schools. Now, in the Dapchi and Chibok, we know clearly that it is Boko Haram. And Boko Haram, as a terrorist organization, they crave publicity. And there is no better way of getting publicity than attacking a girls' school in an area where already there are efforts to, to increase girl child enrollment. So when a terrorist attack a girls' school in particular, I'm sorry to say, even more than a boys' school, the uproar, because we saw what happened after the Chibok, even, first ladies, national leaders from across the countries, they are shouting. So a girls' school in particular, or schools in general, for a terrorist is an attractive target because of the publicity, value of such an attack. Now in Katsina, we are not yet sure whether it is an extension of terrorism from Boko Haram, or let's assume they are, ordinary criminals. For these ones also, to be honest with you, when a child is abducted, there is more sympathy, there is more effort to get that child out than more when it is an adult. So a criminal's mindset knows that there is advantage of attacking schools. This is notwithstanding that the fact that the international community, the African Union, the UN, since the conflicts in Iraq, in Afghanistan, they have seen this trend of attacking schools. The only thing we have to say is that I am happy that the Nigerian government, even before this incident, has adhered to what is called the Safe School Declaration, which is a declaration to, that is aimed at protecting schools. Right. I know Nigeria joined this, this movement in 2019, and I think effort is being done. But then, again, like I said, it's not only government.
Right.
States, we have schools now, gentlemen, that don't even have windows. There are no perimeter fences, no walls. You can enter anywhere. It's not that
you have raised some valid points.
A criminal from entering, but
Pardon
it
me.
will deter him.
You have raised some valid points. So let's speak with Honorable Adeogun to understand the thinking, because you mentioned government, and government is at various levels. Now, Honorable Adeogun, first to respond to some of the issues he raised, he talked about the Safe School Declaration. I mean, the government actually has spoken about that, because we had an opportunity to learn from what we saw in Chibok, what we saw in Dapchi, but now we're seeing this again. And this is not just the only school that has been attacked in recent times. So from a national security perspective, how did we miss this?
I think we need to get an understanding that terrorists will always look for soft targets. It's much more difficult for them to engage the military, so they have to look for soft targets where they can get the most publicity, and I think that's what's happened in Dapchi and in Chibok. The present case in Katsina is an ongoing operation, so we don't have a full details of what really transpired or who is responsible. But the truth, too, is that schools, boarding schools, especially in conflict zones, need to understand, once the management of schools should understand that they have responsibilities as well. I am aware of what happened in schools elsewhere. Children are trained about response to attacks, response to conflicts. When there's such an issue, they know where to move to, they know how to respond in case there's an attack. But in this case, it doesn't look like there's such training, there's such simulation among the students. So that's why they all ran into separate areas, and then it's difficult to account for them. But I think going forward, it's a lesson that we should take, all public schools or private schools, all schools, not just in the conflict areas, but all over Nigeria. We need to understand that we have responsibilities, and emergency preparedness, emergency training and simulation should be part of the education.
Who is responsible for this emergency preparedness and training? It would seem you're placing the bulk at the table of the school management. Am I right?
I'm saying, you see, first we need to understand that security is a collective responsibility. The moment an institution takes custody of children, it becomes their responsibility to protect such children. So the management of the schools have responsibility to provide basic security. My colleague here was mentioning issues about schools having walls, having some kind of deterrence. That's the responsibility of the school. Now, the training itself is the responsibility of the school. They would do it in collaboration with existing government security institutions. So it's not something they can do alone, but there must be collaboration.
Because, I mean, we know that there are a lot of issues we're still combating education-wise. I mean, talk about equipping our schools. You know, you listen to him talking about some schools not having windows, not having doors or perimeter fence. So clearly, I mean, the schools can only do as much, right?
No, you see, this is a boarding school. There's a difference between a day school and a boarding school. And then there's a difference between a school in a conflict area. The Northwest has been facing issues of banditry for a while, so it's not new. The Northeast has been facing issues of banditry. So if you are boarding schools in these zones, there are basics that we should prepare for. I'm not saying it's their fault, but we're saying we need to prevent, we need to be ready for such emergencies.
Which brings me to that previous question. Who is we in this case?
The school, the police. It's a responsibility of both.
Right.
Then because we already know that we have terrorist institutions, terrorist issues in this area, and then banditry. I think there should have been a recognition that schools will be soft targets, and then we'll try to do a lot more to keep schools under complete surveillance. I think that will make response to such emergencies faster.
All right. Well, Group Captain Sheo, is it any significant, really, that this attack happened at a time when the president was on a private visit to his hometown in Katsina State?
Well, in all honesty, that is a very curious twist to this. One would say, you know, as if it is even a deliberate attempt to embarrass Mr. President. However, that is not what should concern us. Whether the president was in his state or not, I think it is a priority to ensure that our children are our most prized assets, you know. So wherever you have children, we should put efforts. Like I said, what this teaches us is that we went to sleep after Chibok. We want to sleep after Dapchi. Because I remember the former British Prime Minister was the one who started this safe schools initiative, but it was abandoned. But what we are seeing now, honest, is an eye-opener. The government should come into it. School management should come into it. Local government should come into it. Even local communities where schools are hosted, because we all have children there, we have to come there. Back to what you said, definitely this is something that will need resources. And some schools are more advantageous than others. Private schools, where the elites, like you and me, probably take their children, they are more in position to do this thing. But where public schools, which are more than even the private schools, cannot do, government should come into it to see that the minimum level of security and safety. The Honorable here spoke about drill. How many of our schools do drill? Do we even do drill in our public places, in the ministries, in the departments? We don't. So that is to say, it could be kidnapped today, it could be fire. The global best practice is to be doing drills to prepare If you prepare, it's not as if it will completely stop the incident happening. But when eventually the incident happens, everybody knows what he's going to do. And definitely the casualty rate is going to be reduced.
Right, gentlemen, some measures have been taken in the past, especially by the Katsina state government to try and stem this tide of banditry. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Plus, we'll also expand this discussion beyond Katsina state and look at the national security situation. Join us again. Welcome back to the program. We still have with us tonight Honorable Adejara Adeogun, Vice Chairman, House Committee on National Security and Intelligence, as well as Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, Adjunct Professor at the George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies in Germany, and Deputy Head Security and Safety at the African Union Commission. We're discussing what played out in Katsina State, the abduction, the fact that over 300 students are unaccounted for, and of course, what is happening afterwards. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with us on the program. Well, Honorable Adeogun, let me begin with you in the second half. I mean, the state governor has put in place some initiatives before now, because you know well that Katsina State has been terrorized by bandits over the past few months. Local governments like Bakori, Batari, Safana, Sabuwa, and Kankara, as we have seen. So the peace initiative was thought of such that, there was this negotiation between bandits, such that bandits will be released, that arrested bandits will be released, and abductees on the side of the bandits would also be released. I know you have spoken about amnesty for Boko Haram members, but this is quite different. So let me get your thoughts on that, first of all. Do you think that that has been effective in combating this issue of banditry, especially in Katsina State?
I think negotiating with bandits or thinking of amnesty for bandits is actually an acceptance of failure. It's a vote of no confidence on the capability of the security forces that we actually have to sit down with criminals to negotiate. But then that's the situation we found ourselves, and I think the governor of Katsina State was helpless, and he took that measure. But from what you're saying now, it has failed. It's not going to work. When you're offering amnesty, you offer amnesty to someone who's been defeated, someone who's actually asking, come and help me, not someone who's saying, look, I want to fight to die. So I think we're adopting the wrong procedure. What I think we should do is actually build the capability of our security forces to actually be able to take the fight to the bandits and defeat them in their own place, not negotiate with them. Negotiating is actually, it's not going to solve the problem. What we're going to do is just transfer the mad bandits from one location to another. That's what's going to happen. Because like a lot of my bandits will say, look, the weapon they're carrying is like you holding a pen to do your job. Someone is saying, give me your pen without offering you something in return. They're not going to return it. So for as long as they have weapons and you're negotiating with them, you're actually making them more powerful. That's what will happen. And you create new role models, and there'll be a lot of younger people who will get involved in banditry. That's what we're going to have at the end of the day.
You know,
it's not a solution.
Right, Captain Shehu, so that would imply that at least these bandits are known to the government to an extent. I mean, if there's a channel of communication, so it means that from time to time they can always communicate. Do you think that will be vital in rescuing those abducted and, of course, getting them back to safety?
Definitely in banditry, in most of the cases, they are locals who are living within the area. So definitely there are family lines, there are social lines, and there are interactions, intermarriages, which can be, exploited to find out. But permit me to talk about, the idea of entering into a negotiation, amnesty for bandits. In all honesty, I have been one that has always opposed that idea. I think it's a short-term measure. If any governor does it, maybe just for, to come to the TV and put on TV that I've negotiated, but it will never work. Especially when you look at the kind of bandits that are operating in the Northwest. These are not people that are even well educated. Given the negotiating with them would only give them the impression that, look, we are equal to the government. And that's what we are saying. It's not going to work. I would not like to put it on the same pedestal with amnesty in the Northeast, which is something that when you look at global best practice, there are reasons you could advance for doing amnesty But again, we have to talk of the timing. Should it be during the war? Should it be after? I would say after the war, because that is even what international humanitarian law, suggests. Why do we do amnesty in the case of counterinsurgency? Is the fact that it is it's a non-international armed conflict. So the government is fighting people who are citizens of the country. If it were an international conflict, let's say Nigeria versus Cameroon, after the war, all the Cameroonians will say, go back to your country. Nigerians come back to your country. But that is the difficulty with international armed conflict. If it ends, it can never end in such a way that all Boko Haram members are killed. It can never end that way. Definitely will capture some will surrender. What do you do with them? Do you tell them to leave the country? No. Can you remove their citizenship? You cannot do that. So that is why international humanitarian law recommends that amnesty. But in recommending that amnesty, I think what we should look at is timing. It said amnesty after hostilities have ended. Because in all honesty, if you do amnesty while hostilities are going, there is the danger. I'm not saying we have seen that, but there's the danger of recidivism. The person that we captured now and amnestize him, he could go back and join the rank. So what is to be done is after the conflict. And even then, it is not, a one-size-fits-all amnesty. Those that have committed what is called in international law grievous crimes against humanity, those ones cannot go. But if you have somebody, we know in the Boko Haram, there are some that are caught, and forced into Boko Haram. There are some whose parents were abducted, and then the children followed them. You could look at this case by case after the conflict, and then those are the ones at lower level of involvement that should, enjoy amnesty. The ones that are leaders, the ones that we have evidence have committed crime, they should not enjoy amnesty.
The tricky part of this usually is the fact that with this kind of trend, there will always be inferences and thoughts like, well, there was a precedence. So militants were granted amnesty. Boko Haram terrorists were granted amnesty. We're seeing some sort of amnesty for bandits now. So where will this really end? Because clearly the state government think that this is the right way to go. But some will say this is backfiring with this recent attack we have seen at Kankara.
Well, like I said, I try to differentiate between amnesty in a non-international armed conflict or counterinsurgency. That one is recognized as a global best practice. I can mention, many countries that did that and have given the reasons. But right. Amnesty for criminals like bandits, in fact, there is no any legal or global best practice precedents for giving amnesty to even the Niger Delta, Niger Delta militants, or even now the bandits in Northwest. I will not subscribe to amnesty for bandits or criminals, but with some modification, I can subscribe to amnesty for ex-Boko Haram, different grades, like I said, differentiating one from the other.
Okay. Honorable Adeogun, the defense minister during that visit said that based on the brief that they got, that this kind of operation will be very, very simple to accomplish. Does that give you comfort?
I think it's premature to make such a general statement, especially when you're having an operation that is still ongoing. I don't know what brief you got, but I think it's premature.
Also, he spoke about designating bandits as terrorists. How much of a game changer will that be? Well,
see, before you declare bandit as terrorists, it means that you know they are an organized group. But I'm aware that most of the bandit groups in the Northwest are actually not really organized. It's not like Boko Haram that they have a known leader that you know this. And then in the Northwest, actually, most of them are community-based. So one bandit to one group, another. So how many terrorist groups are you going to identify? And then when you say some banditry group is a terrorist group, you must be able to identify them with a name. So what name are we going to call them? So we need to be careful now not to escalate criminality into the realm of terrorism.
Well, a couple of solutions have been given. One by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, saying that a state of emergency should be declared, especially in states that are facing security challenges. I mean, this will maybe have to be done with recourse to the National Assembly. So is that something you're also looking at?
I think in the course of the debate last week, I think the issue of actually having security emergency in some parts of the country was discussed, and a lot of members actually favored that. But the caveat was there was this worry based on the experience of what happened with under President Obasanjo, in which declaration of state of emergency entails removing the governor. So because of the political dimension, people, were all felt that, look, we need to be careful here. And then there's some states where you realize that you've had fantastic governors like Borno State, where the man is doing everything, even put his life on the line. So you're careful not to do something that will actually undermine such a leader that's shown so much promise. So that's where we're being careful about it. But the truth is, just like you have a state of emergency being declared in the area of education, I think we're at some point now in which we need to identify every part of the country where we're having security challenges, and then we've got to take drastic actions to address them. Well, the issue is there's a lot of dependence on the military, but we all know that the military is actually overstretched. So it's not just enough to say we're declaring a state of emergency. Have we prepared the police to be able to combat these criminals when you declare the state of emergency? Because it's not for us to say we're declaring state of emergency and then what are you going to do? You take the military there. When the military is overstretched, you'll find out that you're opening new fronts everywhere. It's better to concentrate our forces and let the military concentrate on the insurgency in the northeast. And then we equip the police to tackle with the issue of banditry in the northwest. Well, that will solve the problem, not just mere declaration, not a verbal declaration of state of emergency.
Okay, well, Captain, so yes, this talk about state of emergency has come up at the House of Representatives. The former Vice President has also spoken about it. Well, I'd like to know, because you've been following the trends, really, have we gotten to that point just yet?
I think we have even, the trend of declaring security as an emergency in Nigeria, we have even passed. We should have done it like day before yesterday. The point I am making, again, I align myself with the honorable lawmaker. It is not just a verbal declaration that security is a state of emergency. In my understanding of state of emergency, especially when it concerns security or war effort, what it means when you say declare of emergency, and I'm happy the honorable speaker is here, is that gives the president, Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief, all the powers to get funds anywhere and ensure that they are channeled into the war or security effort. I think that is the meaning. As opposed to the normal meaning of security, state of emergency of saying that curfew is imposed, no movement, or no group of people. I want to see the state of emergency as something being back. Because in all honesty, since we started this counterinsurgency from 2009, and then now joined with the banditry. We have to remember 2009, there was no banditry. Now it has joined. We are not taking this problem as a country in war. I will give you a small example. When we had our unfortunate civil war, the armed forces, the whole Nigerian armed forces was one division. But within the 3 years, 1967, 1970, the Nigerian armed forces shot to 250,000 officers and men. I have not seen that happening. There has not been any emergency recruitment pari passu the deterioration of our security situations. I've checked the numbers. I have not seen any, a diametric increase in the number of troops, in the number of police that we have. And definitely we don't have these numbers. The Katsina case is an issue. If it takes I counted maybe 8 or 10 hours for response to come, it means there are no security forces nearby there. It's numbers. And the ones that came, we should ask from where did they come? You are plugging, you removed another gap from somewhere to come and fill in Katsina. What if something happens there? We need numbers. So when we talk of emergency, please, I want to see freeing for the president to prioritize, because definitely, gentlemen, we have to accept we don't have numbers. We have serious shortage of equipment. That one is a fact. Now, please permit me to say briefly about the issue of whether we should declare bandits as terrorism. Terrorism experts are always conscious, and they always warn about enlarging the meaning of terrorism. Because once you start enlarging the meaning of terrorism, before you know it, almost everything will be terrorism. Banditry itself is bad enough, but we don't have to put everything. So honest, I will not subscribe to the idea of declaring bandits, because once you start that, to be honest, the law always looks to prevent abuse. If you enlarge, that's why up to now, the world does not have a single definition of terrorism. Even our Terrorism Prevention Act, it didn't define terrorism, but it defined terrorist acts. So please, I will supply caution. And again, on the issue, I think it will not be too much again to add my weight to this. In all honesty, when operation is ongoing, it will be imprudent to say it is going to be easy and quick. because so many things are not known yet. So honest, while we are praying our security forces, both military and paramilitary, will come out with a good story after this Katsina with no many casualties. We cannot, forecast whether it is going to be easy or quick and short. We hope it is going to be, but we cannot assume that.
Captain Shehu, those kinds of statements are good for sound bites. I mean, it's good for the press to relay that back to the people. But let me go to Honorable Adeogun on one issue you raised, which is about recruitment. So more recruitment clearly means more funding, because you definitely have to equip those you're recruiting and ensure that you can pay them for as long as they will be in service. I know you've spoken about funding. You have sat at different meetings, committees, just to take a look at the issues around security, and funding is a big issue for you. So can we afford that, really?
Well, I think what is teaching now, where it's not about whether we can afford it, it's that we have need for it. It's an emergency. If we're considering and declaring state of emergency, it means you have to look for the funds. You can't go to the market if there's no security. You can't invest in your economic activities without security. So it's an emergency, so we've got to look for the funds. Wherever we're going to find it, we've got to find it. It's the reason the National Assembly was deliberating on the issue of the military, the trust fund for the military, the trust fund for the police. So we can raise funds from other sources to help equip the police, enhance their training, enhance the recruitment of people into the force. If we don't have the numbers, then they're not going to do magic. And the truth is, right now, they're grossly inadequate. Each time people talk about, we have so many policemen, you have to look at the number. Do we have enough numbers? The United Nations ratio should be 1 to 400. What's our ratio? We're probably 1 to 600. And then when we look at our 1 to 600, you'll have to ask yourself, 1 to 600, how many harms do we have among the 600? And the 600 that we count in Nigeria will include the traffic policemen. So do we have enough to police us? We don't have. And so if we need to recruit, we need to find the funds to at least support the new intakes, the training of the new intake, retraining of existing intakes, and then the weaponry. It's not enough for us to just have policemen to have numbers without a weapon for them to do the battle.
Okay, well, Honorable Adeogun, you are the Vice Chairman, House Committee on National Security and Intelligence. And a lot of Nigerians would like to know just exactly how much work you do, at those sit-ins, because it's vital to Nigeria's security. In different shapes and sizes, we've seen insecurity in this country over time. There are talks about whether this is worse off than what we had 5-6 years ago. Well, the jury is still out there. But from the legislative work you do from time to time, looking at these security challenges, what, in your opinion, really is the challenge here? How did we get to this point?
First, we failed to prepare when we had the time. For a long time, we didn't invest in the police, we didn't invest in the military. The military, after the Civil War, had weapons that were not renewed, and then these are things that need to be renewed every day. Nigerian policemen are recruited, and then the average policeman goes to the police college, is given 10 rounds of ammunition, he fires that 10 rounds and will say, it's ready to police. But unfortunately, policing requires that every month, every other month, they have to go to the range to learn, to improve on their weapon handling capabilities. But we haven't provided for it. So each time people come around and say, we need to fund the police, Nigerians will like, they have too much money. But they don't have enough to even do the basics. Look at what happened during the EndSARS riots in Lagos. Why did they have to involve the military? Because the police didn't have equipment. There was not a single riot handling equipment for the entire Lagos State Police Command. So that's what we have. That's the problem we have. So yes,
just
we know,
a
lot of people like we're facing economic challenges.
Honorable Adeogun.
But the truth is, we need to actually secure this country beyond what we're doing now to be able to at least get our economy itself up and down.
But just to be clear, you meant the EndSARS protest or EndSARS riot?
Well, the protest led to a riot eventually, didn't it?
Okay, just to be clear, the one you're referring to. But as we wind down, gentlemen, Captain, there are a lot of questions, really. He has spoken about some of the challenges we face, how we got to this point. I know quite a lot of points are meant to be made there, but is there any quick fix to what we're facing right now? Is there any sort of quick fix we can look forward to in sorting this challenge?
I'm sorry, there's hardly any quick fix. But then we know the problems. And again, I still align with him. You asked why did we go here? To be honest with you, we started getting it wrong since the return of democracy. In all honesty, if you check what we have spent on internal and external security, military and police has not been much. History has it. Countries that are at war, like UK, there was a time they were spending 50% of their GDP on the war effort. If you check the records, since the insurgency started, we have never spent 3% of our GDP. Of course, there are out-of-budget expenses, but I'm talking of budgeted funds. So definitely, we are not spending like a country at war. We are not spending like a country that has multiple internal security challenges apart from the Northeast operation. I think we need to do that. But in times when a country realizes that its security architecture is not working, there is no quick fix. I think there is to be a think tank that will sit down and ask, what kind of armed forces do we need in Nigeria? What kind of police do we need in Nigeria? What kind of intelligence services do we need in Nigeria? Vis-a-vis our security situations in the country, vis-a-vis the role we want to play in West Africa and the larger continent and the world at large. It is only when we answer this question. And I'm happy you brought a National Assembly member here. Again, that buttresses the point, as somebody is saying that the problem of security is exclusively an executive. In all honesty, it is not. Because it is the legislature that will earmark money. They need to know. They need to know where this is. And I want to see, maybe if we say as a short term, I want to see an honest discussion between the military and the security agencies heads and the executive and the legislature. What are your gaps?
Well, Captain, goodness, we're totally out of time, but I'd like to thank you so much, gentlemen, for, expanding on this topic. Honorable Adejara Adeogun, Vice Chairman, House Committee on National Security and Intelligence, as well as Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, Adjunct Professor at George C. Marshall European Center for Security Studies in Germany. We appreciate your thoughts on the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, we take another break, and when we return, we'll see how we can better elect leaders in the country. This should interest you. Join us again.
It's a big responsibility. It's historic. No Nigerian has been so privileged to serve as chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission twice, and it's a responsibility I'm going to discharge consistent with the oath of office I took and my allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. What should Nigerians expect? We have clearly demonstrated in recent elections that elections are getting better and better, and the elections will continue to get better and better. By coincidence today, the National Assembly is holding a public hearing on the amendment of the electoral legal framework. This is important, and this time around, working with the National Assembly will ensure the speedy passage of the amendment bill. And once it is assented to, it will help us enormously in confronting the challenges ahead. The preparations for the 2023 general elections have proceeded in earnest. We need certainty, and therefore the electoral legal framework is fundamental, without which we cannot formulate our regulations and guidelines. Without our regulations and guidelines, we cannot conclude work on the manual for the training of ad hoc staff for the elections. So from here, I am going to proceed to the National Assembly. So work begins in earnest, and we have already started.
Welcome back. Well, about this time last week, the results from the by-elections in 11 states of the Federation were trickling in. But equally important was the conduct of the election, which has been the subject of various analyses on how we can improve our electioneering process. Incidentally, a few days after, just as you saw before now, the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, was sworn in for a second term in office, and he gave those promises, as you may have heard. On that same day, like he said, at a different venue, though, the National Assembly hosted a public hearing on the bill to repeal the Electoral Act 2010 as amended and enact the Independent National Electoral Commission Act 2020. Well, the purpose of that act is quite simple: to regulate the conduct of federal, state, and area council elections and for related matters. So clearly, there's so much happening in the electoral space, and you don't want to be caught unawares, because the outcome of these activities will determine the quality of our voting process and ultimately the quality of the leaders we elect. This evening, we have joining us on Sunday Politics, Mr. Nick Dazang, who's the Director of Voter Education and Publicity. Thank you for joining us on the program. Well, the INEC chairman was just sworn in for a second term. We listened to him. Now, this is the first time in the history of a commission we're having such reappointment. And that would imply that he's doing something different. Just what is that?
Thank you for having me. Let me say that we in INEC are excited by the second tenure of the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. And this excitement is informed by the fact that he has been able, with other national commissioners who are members of the commission, to add tremendous value to the conduct of elections, as evidenced by the conduct of the Edo and Ondo governorship elections. The commission under his watch has been able to raise the bar, working with other critical stakeholders. And we in the commission are excited that Professor Mahmoud Yakubu is being rewarded for such hard and overarching hard work. I am a witness to the conduct of elections from 2003, when I joined the commission, to the conduct of these elections under his watch. And I have seen how he has trained himself and other national commissioners who are members of this commission to take us to where we are today. And that explains why there is a lot of excitement in the commission.
You know, I'll be quite...
This kind of... hello?
It will be quite surprising, really, if you didn't rate him such highly. But let's take a look at some of the promises that were made, really. Now, one of them was to clean up the register. Now, what does this entail?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of talk around it. What does this cleanup entail, and how soon are we going to see that?
Well, this cleanup entails continuously removing persons that ought not to be in the register. Because the basis for any credible election is a credible register. If you don't have a register that is credible, you cannot have a credible election. And we have seen from 2011 to 2020 that we have tried assiduously in the commission to have a register that is credible. And we have introduced technology to enhance this credibility. And going forward, there is the need to introduce further technology, to enhance the credibility of the elections that we are going to conduct in 2023. And that explains why the commission intends to introduce new technology in the revalidation of the register that we had put in place since 2010, 2011. And the way forward, is to introduce technology and to ensure that this register is credible and that the elections in 2023 reflect this credibility, and that our elections are better. And going forward, what the election management body, that is INEC, wants to do is to work in concert with the National Assembly to bring reforms, to bring amendments to the Constitution and the Electoral Act in such a fashion as to further deepen technology in the conduct of elections. We have seen clearly and categorically that in the conduct of Edo and Ondo governorship elections, and even prior to that, the introduction of technology has enhanced the credibility of these elections.
Okay, well, Mr. Dazang, pardon me, we're really running out of time. So let me see if I can ask you 3 questions in 2 minutes. So Help me with that.
Yes.
On one hand, we're looking forward to 2023, but 2021 will be a big year really for elections because there's a promise that this act, INEC Act 2020, will be passed by then in the first quarter. Are you optimistic about this?
Well, we have been working on this since 2007, actually. The Commission had engaged the National Assembly since 2007 to ensure that certain amendments are visited to the Constitution and the Electoral Act with a view to adding value to the conduct of elections. And we will be very glad, we will be very delighted if we are able to see this in the first quarter of 2021 as, you know, promised by the leadership of the National Assembly. We don't have any doubts about
Mr. Dazang, you need to help me here.
Yes.
I have two more questions to go. Secondly, a lot of people are asking, how soon will the continuous voter registration begin? Is there a particular date? And what is holding us back?
We have not put in place a particular date, but we are looking at the first quarter of next year, which is that is between January and March 2021, when we will flag off the continuous voter registration exercise, and it will stop 6 weeks to the conduct of the 2023 general elections. You can take that to the bank.
All right. I'm being told we're entirely out of time. So here's what we'll do. We'll continue this conversation some other time, but I'd like to thank you so much. At least we got some information from you, Mr. Nick Dazang, Director of Voter Education and Publicity of INEC. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I am Kaido Kikiolu. Do enjoy the rest of your evening.